Greetings, Spirit. I'd like to set the intention that clarity in the conversation that will transpire with the celestial beings today can invite this tribe to participate with all that life has to offer us this week. We would surround this gathering with power, protection, and support, that what needs to transpire has a clear path, and that we join together to do what needs to be done here and now. Greetings, tribe. As I sat down to consider what was in play this week that would be worth some pondering on our part, we're in the season of Cancer, so the moon, of course, is in play, but initially, it's because the sun is traveling through the sign of Cancer. When I looked at the aspects or the planetary conversations that were going to transpire this week, I had four. I indicated at the beginning of this Cancer cycle that I might spend a little bit more time looking at that lunar signature. Well, this week when I looked at it, and probably the reason why I don't have a tendency to lean into that lunar signature as often as some others might, because I know quite a number of astrologers that when they do their weekly or monthly look, they're basically looking at the moon moving from sign to sign to sign every 2.5 days to things. Anyway, this week we have Mercury switching signs into Cancer, Mars switching signs into Taurus, Mercury making a square to Jupiter, and the Sun making a sextile to Uranus. Those are the four planets other than the lunar signature. Now I'm just going to rattle off a whole lot of lunar signatures, and the reason I'm doing it, let me actually show you rather quickly, is that the moon, which you see right over here in Virgo, is in the process of moving this week, because every week the moon moves essentially 1/4 of the chart. So it's going to be going through an opposition to all these planets, as well as making other aspects. Let me just read them off to you here rather rapidly, but you don't have to pay attention to it, just to let you know part of the reason why I don't lean into that lunar dance thing. So here we go. Monday, the moon opposes Neptune retrograde. The moon squares Mercury. Wednesday, the moon opposes Jupiter. The moon squares the sun. The 7th, the moon trines Saturn. The moon squares Pluto. The 8th, the moon opposes Mars. The moon trines Mercury. The 9th, the moon squares Jupiter. The moon opposes Uranus. The moon squares Saturn. The moon trines Neptune. And on the 10th, the moon trines Jupiter. So probably the one thing to hold forward in our consciousness is that the moon is going to be talking with all these different planetary energies this week. And the moon The moon is cold and wet. Now, what does cold and wet mean? Cold slows things down, but wet, it makes connections to energy. It's an energy connection kind of energy. So we have moods. These are some of the lunar meanings, the lunar arena. Moods, home, domestic nature, nurturing qualities, and the symbol of the moon, two arcs of consciousness, one within the other. Can you sense the feeling nature of this nurturing moon? This shows how you respond to life emotionally. Without feeling, there is no joy, no soul. Feelings are mutable, like the changing phases of the moon. The moon reacts and responds, sensitive to the life it touches. And you may have noticed in that long litany of lunar connections to the other planets that was going to happen this week, it's touching a lot. So this process, our process as a collective, and I think that's probably a good way to look at it, because that lunar energy moves around us faster than anything else, and can, if we are willing, allow us to recognize that we are a collective. And in that, there's a potency, a power to actually engage at a feeling nature with all of life. And I'm not just including the human dance moves that we're going through, but all of life. You know, that moon, it's engaged with the fluid level of all of life. You think of the largest scale as its interaction with the sun and the earth, and the moon creates the tides that are, going in and going out around the planet as they're being pulled by these magnetic energies that are at work. And within us, we're like 70% liquid. And if you think that you can live beyond the realm of that tidal flow of life, you're kidding yourself. Because we are very much offered the opportunity to tune into that tidal flow within our own capacities all the time. How much are we tuned into what it means to be at home? Because the moon, ironically, has a connection to what is home. Is it just a box that you retreat to at the end of the day or at any time that you want to escape from the pressures of this global interactive energy that we're all a part of? It could be. Or is it more a state of consciousness within which one can recognize a tonal quality of resonance that is happening all the time? Are you listening to the sound of life? Is it begging your participation in ways that you may or may not be comfortable with? It's all in play. So the week begins. Mercury, you can kind of see right down here near the end of Gemini, on Tuesday is going to move into Cancer. And Mars, right here at the end of Aries, is going to move into Taurus. Mercury, how we think, how we talk. What's the capacity of perception? And, we're talking about a very substantial lunar signature this week, but we're still in this field of Cancer. And so our perceptions, that Gemini or that mercurial tool moving into Cancer, might that actually, this is an opportunity that we all have to be able to, open up our channels of perception to feel more dynamically than we normally might be inclined to everything. Sense it, and, this is one of the reasons I brought up that idea of home, because home is from a lunar perspective, it's a fluid process. Earth is home, being influenced by this lunar dance, which every month circles around us, touching all the aspects of the entire celestial zodiac. And therefore, when one thinks of home, there's a lot of these kinds of energies that are always in play that may not always make you feel the most comfortable in what your ideas or ideology of what home is. And Mercury moving into Cancer right now is going to say, open your antenna. Do not close down. Pay attention to this energy signature. It's attempting to possibly awaken all of us to, a sensing of a much deeper and more profound connective capacity that we do have if we're willing with all of life. Mars, that impulse, energy, that drive to do things, is shifting out of the sign Aries, where it has been so much at home. The drive has been very intense lately, to do things. As it shifts into Taurus, Taurus is, in all the signs of the zodiac, you get a strong yang kind of energy, or yang, as some people might call it, that is, it's outward. It's the impulse to, to accomplish something. That's Aries. And then the next sign, and the signs go yan, yin, yan, yin, yan, yin, around the zodiac. And the next sign, or the next house, the next sign, Taurus, is kind of like, chill, dude. The energy's been driving so friggin' strong and everything. I need a break. And so this is the flavor that, Mars is now going into that zone, still active and energetic, because that is what Mars is. But it's in a zone where it's not going to be necessarily given the same kind of impetus to be accomplishments, to just do things all the time. It's more like, because you've been through the cycle, that active Aryan type cycle, perhaps it is time, to kind of kick back and, take it easy for a while. Taurus is looking at, what's of value? What are my values? And so, in the experience of Mars going through Aries over the last number of weeks, what has been tickled up to the surface? What has been, pushed out there as something that you really felt you needed to do? Because now, with Mars going into Taurus, it's time to say, what are the values that may have been stirred up in that Aryan cycle that now could use a reflective capacity to see what is and what isn't of value in my world. Because, and it's not something that's going to be just overtly casual, because hey, it's Mars. There's an energy. That energy and drive is still there. It's just not, it doesn't have that Aryan fire lit under it right now. It's Earth. So the factors that come to the surface as I contemplate this is it practical? All the Earth signs have to do with practicality. This is the first of the Earth signs. And practical from a Taurian perspective says, does this have value that I can tune into my foundation, Mother Earth, and utilize that energy in a way that is connective to all of life? That's in play. Yeah, I just switched the chart to Tuesday so you can see there's the Mars in Taurus, there's the Mercury in Cancer, and the Moon, right off the bat. You see the very first aspect that's making this, we got this opposition to Neptune retrograde. We've got a trine up here to Pluto in Capricorn. We've got this, by the way, this is a square forming to Mercury. I think probably one of the aspects that this week holds to pay attention to when we're looking at the moon, but also because of the fact that the solar dance through Cancer set in motion this experience that with the new moon at 7 degrees of Cancer, that, are there factors in play for this solar cycle that require our paying attention to the lunar dance? In the lunar dance, there are basically 4 key energy focal points, and these are the quarter moons, full moon, and new moon. And the reason they become focalized is because the quarter moons, or 90 degrees from the sun, happen when the moon is in a sign that is not in an element that actually plays well or easily with the solar orb. So this first lunar square, which happens on Wednesday this week, you can kind of see here, I just put it up to Wednesday. The moon here, it's at 8 degrees, but this is at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the moon moves a degree every 2 hours. And you see the sun here is at 14, that means it's 6 degrees behind the sun, which means in 12 hours, or 8 o'clock this evening, will be the first quarter moon. And according to Dane Rudger, and I don't know how many other astrologers have tuned into this, the first quarter square of the moon is a crisis in action. If you think of life, impulse and action, Aries, action is one of the first kind of signatures that life requires of us. And because this is happening between Libra, how we get along with others, Cancer, how we tune into our home, our family, our ancestors. There's a deep rootedness to Cancer. And Libra is like, here's the experience of, getting out there, interacting with other people and stuff. And so you can kind of see this, cardinal drive. These are both cardinal signs. So Libran cardinal drive to do what's required to spend time with others. And Cancer is, it's more of a closed-in awareness of, how close to heart and soul am I? Am I tuned into my deeper, most rooted feeling, sensate nature? And, can I, here's the square, can I comfortably be able to invite others into that, that core reality of what it means to be at home? This doesn't necessarily easily transpire, and so the crisis in action is, I'm meeting a lot of people, am I comfortable to invite them home with me? Essay question. This is something that you have to answer. Who amongst all those that you encounter are going to be invited home? And at home doesn't necessarily mean the box that you live in. Home can be a consciousness that says, to the other that you meet. Can we find a cohesive version of what home means that we might be able to tune into each other's perspective in a way that there is some level of conscious connection where our version of home includes this biosphere that we live within, that includes the conversations of the planetary celestial surround. I didn't say I would ever think small, but our capacity to engage specifically with our biosphere is an invitation to the celestial surround that is part of this very same matrix. And essentially what you're going to see when we're talking about these 4 points, the first quarter, the full moon, the last quarter, or the waning quarter, and the next new moon. How it moves is, if you consider that this is Wednesday, about every 7 days, you're going to get one of these points. So this is a Wednesday. Next Wednesday, we'll have the full moon. The Wednesday after that, we'll have the waning quarter moon. And then the Wednesday after that, and there's some fluctuation in this because it's slightly longer than the 4-week amount. We'll have the next new moon, and it'll be in Leo. So this is a dance that's always going on, something to pay attention to. If you're going to tune into the moon, you may as well know the factors of this dance. You've got this your first week after your new moon is kind of like, here's a crisis in action. Did I or am I on a trajectory that, is working for me? Have I taken the right action in the intentions that I set at the new moon? And because the signs, air and water, are not generally going to go out of their way to easily work with one another. I mean, they all work with one another, but sometimes there's a little bit of tension in there, and that's what a square is. It's a tension because the elements are of such a nature that they, it's kind of like air and fire get along really well together. Water and earth get along really well together. There's an energetic ease to the flow of them being able to converse on parallel wavelengths. Now, full moon. This time, the full moon is going to be up here in Cancer. You can say, oh, and a Cancer opposition signs. Here we've got this opposition on the full moon between the moon and Jupiter over here in Aries. So oppositions, people will have pretty regularly given a context to what an opposition represents. These are opposite energies, Water, in this case, the full moon is going to be water and earth. I'll be probably talking about it next week because that's when the full moon will be. However, water and earth, remember, they actually have a wavelength that they can operate on where there is a recognition within each of them that something vital is present in this opposite energy that I require. And the Cancer-Capricorn axis is such an axis. This is the parental axis in the zodiac. One, you have a nurturing aspect of parents, and the other is you have an accomplishment aspect, the Capricorn side, the accomplishment aspect of the parental axis. They're both required. You can't just have just total nurturance and not be able to recognize that there's a lot more going on in life that needs to be participated in and with. And that's that Capricorn Cancer opposition at work. There's, there is a little bit of tension there because they may not exactly be working toward this a similar bent in life. But they're both required, kind of like the opposition between Aries and Libra, which is where that Jupiter-Moon opposition is going to be here on Wednesday. And that is that, first, Aries, the self, would be actually not worth much if it didn't have an other to compare notes with, to actually be able to grow the self into a more dynamic way to interact with the other. So you can see the aspects, this other cardinal aspect that I was just talking about, the Cancer-Capricorn axis, Having both those qualities of parental guidance is pretty vital to being able to explore options of what it is one might consider as appropriate direction to go in life. Where's my notes? So, as you can see from this chart, we just take it back a couple of days. We start out the chart with, the moon zipping along here. Virgo, Virgo, Libra, Libra, Scorpio, Scorpio, Sagittarius. That's the end of the week, by the way. So we're going through these three signs from Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio. And, we just get into Sagittarius by the end of the week. And in that process, you can kind of see all the oppositions taking place and all these lines forming up here. We've just gone from Wednesday, which is where we have the first quarter moon, to Thursday. And Thursday, you can kind of see we're nearing the end of Libra. We've got aspects from a square to Pluto, trine to Saturn, an opposition to Chiron, and a trine to Venus. These are all kind of aspects that are in play on Thursday. Thursday is a Jupiter day. There's And, you know, this is why I don't spend so much time with the lunar aspects, because I could talk a couple of hours probably pretty easily if I went into all the lunar aspects that are happening each week. So suffice it to say that paying attention to the moon as a particle in the dance of life that we're going through right now, because we're in Cancer, is necessary, but some caution as to how carried away one wants to get with all the aspects that the moon is going to make. Pay attention to how you feel, that moon thing. And in that sensate nature, know that the moon right now, because of the matrix of how the planets are all lined up, you can kind of see from Capricorn down here to Cancer, this is where all the planets are, from Pluto all the way down here to the sun. And the moon right now is going through this place where it's going to oppose all of them, and it's going to be making the squares and the trines and the sextiles and the quincunxes and the quintiles and the septiles and all these different aspects, which are basically flavorings, the spice rack of what it is that can transpire if we are willing and take the time to do that, magnifying glass perspective on all these different things. But, by all means, just pay attention to the moon. You have a Pluto somewhere. We all do. We all have all the planets somewhere. And being aware of what it is that your particular matrix is probably going to be as relevant, more relevant even than just paying attention to the moon transiting daily, day by day adventure that's going on. The moon, let's say in this week, we can, right off the bat, we say the moon opposes Neptune, then it opposes Jupiter, and then eventually it's going to go down here, it's going to oppose Mars. So where's your Neptune, Jupiter, and Mars? And how do they work in the matrix of the you that you know? Because when the moon is going through its transit things, it's talking to each of those three planets very specifically from that opposition perspective. Remember this, these are two sides of a matrix that are trying to resolve some level of context that they can work on together. And because of that is what's transpiring this week, knowing what your Neptune, Jupiter, and Mars mean in your natal chart are going to have relevance to you very, very specifically. And it would be absolutely foolish not to include that lunar aspect, because the moon is, and where is your natal moon? Because your natal moon's going to have a lot to offer into the transiting lunar dance moves. Let's jump ahead a little bit. This is Sunday. And on Sunday, the Saturday-Sunday signature, actually, it's Mercury is going to square Jupiter, and the Sun is moving into a very tight sextile with Uranus. Mercury in that square to Jupiter. Remember, squares are, this is a little bit more intense. This is fire and water. And it's not too hard to say that fire and water, they're not exactly the the kind of dance partners that when they get out on the floor are going to provide something that might not easily be perceived as, sparks. This is a, you know, and let's think about this. Jupiter is in Aries. The energy of um, the pressure to expand. That's Jupiter in Aries. This impulse to be more than you can be. This is Jupiter in a very dynamic drive for largesse. Mercury, how we think in Cancer down there is, it's tuning in. It's trying to find a commonality of language that can embrace the aspect of, what does home mean to you? Where is the context of family fitting into this? Are you in tune with your ancestral lineage? Do you understand what it means to be rooted in anything? This is Cancer. Mercury is formulating a conversation around that particular matrices. And in a square to Jupiter up there, Jupiter is, providing a opportunity if utilized wisely. And I do believe that is the key to consider, some sort of an impulsive drive to take chances with your conversation about those Cancerian energy signatures. It won't be easy. It's not just going to be handed to you on a silver platter. No, it's going to require you to be very, very specific with what it is that your aim is attempting to accomplish. There's energy there. It's available. But how well do you know yourself? How well do you know that deep-rooted space that is you? Because that's going to have everything to do with the effectiveness of being able to utilize your conversation and that Jupiter drive to become bigger, more resilient, more inclusive. Sun sextile Uranus. Sextile. Here's some energies that, here's Earth and water. These are energies that work well together. The sun, that vital, absolutely brilliant core of all of life as we know it here on planet Earth, is being tickled by and potentially unpredictable Uranian energy, but that Uranus is in Taurus. Taurus is a connection to this planet we live on. It's a connection to what is of value. And because it's Uranus, the things that are of value are probably in flux right now because of that Uranian drive to, it shakes things up. That's its function, is to just rattle the cage of what's going on enough to tip us a little bit off balance. And the reason, there's always a reason for things. The reason for basically spinning things enough to send them out of balance is so that you can recognize that there may be opportunities that you haven't been paying attention to that are attempting to awaken you to other possibilities that you would not have seen if you had managed to keep yourself stayed, solid, and balanced, and likely tunnel visioned into where it is you are headed. And Uranus says, oh, come on, that's overrated. You're missing life if you're following a tunnel of activity that you think you should be headed for. You're missing the dynamics that are all around you that, they could seem like distractions, and possibly that is a good way to look at it. They are distractions. But, are they the kind of distractions that possibly could be, altering the course that you're on into a new direction that is the direction that your soul actually intended in this particular incarnation that you are a part of right now? Essay question. I can't answer that for you, but I think it's something to ponder that you really need to look at very specifically. We'll get rid of the chart because I've covered the main points of what it is that we need to pay attention to this week. Remember, I opened up our circle of consideration today with an energy quest for power, protection, and support to surround us as we go into this week. Have a happy 4th of July. And at this time, I would like to allow all those energy beings that we have drawn together for the consideration of this week with us, the clan, to be released, but not to go too far away. For there may be opportunities that as we proceed through this week, when we would need to call upon you to support the quest that we are on. Aho. Thank you. We'll see you all next week. Have a good adventure.